We have all kinds of good food back there. So I think Frank wouldn't mind if at any time you wanted something to eat, to just go back and get some more. Because otherwise we're going to make you go back and afterwards and take some home with you, because there's a lot there. I want to welcome everybody tonight. It's good to see you, and thanks for coming. I have a few announcements before Frank gets started that I would like to go over. As you came in, we appreciate you signing in because we could get some more names on our email list, and we can let you know of other topics and other speakers that we have coming up. On April 28th, we're going to have a Venus night.
March 28th. Please come March 28th.
Please come March 28th. It's Silver Creek Country Club. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's 7 to 11, and
Get a free drink.
you get a free drink.
You can wear denim or any, casual clothes.
Informal, just kind of, and it's just going to be kind of light pub food served. And
American Idol Scouts will be there.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
Karaoke, they'll be
and
looking for
since
you.
Danny won't be there, the rest of us could win.
exactly right. And then if you're interested on April 12th, now I moved to April, at 10 a.m., we're going to do our Adopt a Road program. So meet at the schoolhouse at 12. And Jody will probably be notifying people on the list, let her know. Now, next month, I guess it's April 9th, our meeting is going to be taught by Kurt Zweikel and Frank Whalen, who Kurt Zweikel is his father was Hess's photographer of Hess's department store. And Frank Whalen, everybody knows, he's a well-known historian in the Lehigh Valley and educator. The presentation will be next door in the council room at Lower Saucon, but it will be on the second Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And the two of them are going to talk about Hess's department store and the history of the department store. And Kurt's father really did a lot through his photography, so it should be very interesting, and he will have pictures to share with us. All right, and that is a month from tonight at 7 o'clock. And then the last thing is that History Day is going to be April 26th. All three historical sites in the area are going to have activities. There'll be a lot of information, publicity coming out. There's going to be an antique car show at the gristmill. The reenactors will be at the Conservancy. They're also going to have a juried photography show of historic pictures that people have taken from the area. And we will have our usual maypole and cakewalks and just a lot of fun activities. And also we're going to have crafters in the schoolhouse. All right? Oh, and oh yeah,
The highlight,
of our day, make yourself a birdhouse, a bluebird house.
which I still haven't done, because every time I go there, they're already all used up by everybody else. So get there early.
Well, he's going to make plenty of them for us this time. So, and my last plug before I introduce Frank is if someone would like to become part of our group or join on our board of directors, let me know. We're always looking for fresh faces, and so we would like you to join us. All right? Now, about several months ago, when we were in the office one day, Frank had told us he would be very happy to come and talk to us about where he was born and where he grew up, Shimersville. And then about a month late, a couple weeks later, when I was in the office, he asked me if I knew where Shimersville was. And I said, yes, I'm so excited. I finally figured out where it was this year. I said, you go out to the schoolhouse and keep going towards Easton. And I said, that's where Shimersville is. And he looked at me and said, you call yourself a historian? I said, oh, so I'm all off? He said, you got that right. And since then, I've run into other people that have said, oh, I know where Shimersville is. It's down by Veracruz. Yeah, that's the other one I've heard. And I guess a lot of us don't know about Shimersville. And this will be very interesting. Frank has a wonderful collection and done a lot of research. So I'm going to turn the meeting now over to Frank Fabian.
Well, we're lucky that there were a lot of people up here looking at the pictures because I had a little test for everybody. A little thing of flex your mental muscles, little puzzles for you to figure out. But we won't do that. Okay, now, for those people who don't know where Shimersville is or was, well, I have to be a justice because I moved the table.
That's right.
Well,
Do you want some of the lights off, Frank?
What?
Want some of the lights off?
I don't know, I didn't see it.
Ooh, unfortunately, we can't videotape in that dark. Turn one of them on. That's better, okay.
All right, if you ever gone out Shimersville Road from 412, which is the road leading into Ellertown, this is the road going out to Freemansburg. This is gonna be quiet because I can't see what's on here. Look up there. This road right here is the road to Freemansburg. This is Apple Butter Road, coming across here. The sewage treatment plant is down there. Now that you can see. And at the wrong time, you can smell it. Now, over here, on the top part of this picture, is a part you had not seen, and you probably won't. Because even on the internet, they show it as a picture, you're going down Shimersville Road and all you see is the trees lined up. But back in there was a place called Pat's Air. That started out somewhere about 1990. Started out as liquid carbolic. It was at that time one of the biggest gas producing plants on the eastern coast. If you paid attention, you would see a lot of big oil tankers or big tankers being pulled through the area. They're white, the tank is white, and on the side is listed Pat's Air. This is where they're coming from. As I say, you won't see it because it's all hidden by a tree line in here, and the road coming out is well hidden. Actually, at one time, the road, you could go in here, come down along here, you can see part of this road, you come around, go down on the other side of the railroad tracks, go all along the railroad tracks, and come out at Bethlehem Railroad Station. There was a road going all the way through there. I used the area quite a bit when I was teaching my son how to drive, and that's where we were picking up the end of every drive lesson, we stopped in there and picked up river stone. There was plenty of it back there. So that is that area, essentially, where I'm going to be concentrating mostly on the village that was there before this. Little other tidbit on the waste treatment plant. Prior to 1952, you had the city of Bethlehem here. Where did all the sewage go?
Don't tell me.
Lehigh River.
Wow.
The north side,
Wow.
the homes, the sewage system on the north side went to Sand Island. It was filtered, the solids taken out, and the water went into the Lehigh. On the south side, it was served by a combination storm and sanitary system, which again discharged into the Lehigh River. So you know what the river was like at that time. All right, once again, for the area. This is down here at South Bethlehem. The green on this program are all the roads. It doesn't show up too good, but this is Crossing Creek coming through here and empties into the Lehigh. One of the things that isn't shown on here is Northampton Heights, which is right in here. Point out this road. This was the old Cokeworks Road. Going in here, it went in and come out at Lower Saucon Church. There was a road from there, back in here, that went straight across and went to Apple Butter Road, which nobody seems to remember what the name of it was. The best one I had was an old friend. It was a Lover's Lane. And I walked in every Sunday going to Sunday school. He lived on Apple Butter Road. I asked him, he thought for a while, he said, Lover's Lane. So, I'm going to talk a lot about Shimersville in here. William Shimer had a foundry here. I'm going to show you some pictures of Helm's Dairy, which I have up here on the wall too, and this area in here. And one of the things which early on, they had a lot of cigar factories around the area. So they must have been growing a lot of tobacco. There was one out here. There was one over here on Apple Butter Road, up in there, and I think there was one on the Black River Road. So I'm not quite sure where it is right now. When the hens got started in dividing up the land in the area, it was better when it was dark and you couldn't see. One of the biggest landholders was Nathaniel Irish. He was one of the first ones to lay claim to land out in this area. And his property, I got a position that's just right, was 500 acres. And that's approximately his land. Now, it wasn't only his first piece of property was cut off over here. Well, as a matter of fact, it went over this way. then he added this piece to it, which is all of Steel City. He also added a section onto here, which included this no-name road. This island here was also his. 500 acres. So he came up, which is what is called Iron Hill, which is again a name given to a place which no longer exists. I will show you pictures of the homes and who lived there. And the entrance is Salton Parking Lot. But what I'm trying to show is from the Lehigh River down to the old Coke Works Road was all Nathaniel Irish's land. He was one of the first settlers to the area. He was a justice of the peace for the Penns. And they said first European settler. Now, here is one which you've never seen before. This is a layout of all the William Penn original land grants in Lower Salton Township. This is what the lands look like. This was Nathaniel Irish. This is a little section that I said he added on. And this is the part where Steel City was, or is. For those interested, Litt's Schoolhouse is out here in this piece of property.
What's that big deal?
The center of Hellertown is right here. This is the Bain property. Come on, it went blank. I'm pulling the suit. Christopher Heller. This was his property over here, and this was his son Michael's. And there was another property in here, and as you can see, the old Bethlehem pipes cut right through here. Matter of fact, we are in this square right now,
I'm not sure because he was over here.
which I couldn't quite put in. Just didn't fit. But these are all the properties. When they first started laying out the properties in the area, all the property lines were north and south. And they were measured in perches, 16.5 feet to a perch. So when this surveyor did this property, he gave it in perches. One of the big problems that we found is that when he did, let's say this property, that was 20 perches, this one was 21, and it was the same size, it went to the same trees. It's very hard to figure some of these out. As you can see up here on top of the mountain, some of them don't match. Properties overlap. Then over in here, in the area. One of the interesting things was, I think it's this little square here. Way back then, from the original land deeds, the cemetery in Lower Salton Church was laid out. It's on that land grant for this property. Just for references, this is Lightsville. Part of this is down in Durham. Cooks Creek runs through here. This is Durham. This is Williams Township down in here. We come over here. This is Upper Salton. And this particular piece is called the Simpson Tract, which all of South Bethlehem is part of. But if you went to the land grant, this is the Lehigh River, by the way. This piece of property is shown flipped over. It was on this side of the Lehigh. So So it makes a little bit of a problem figuring some of this stuff out. This property also was flipped the other way. Another point of reference, this little one here is the Hellertown grist mill. That has changed property quite a few times. It's listed as many cases as Simon Heller got that property. Well, unfortunately, a Matthias Maneke was the first landowner, but within 1 year, he passed away without a will, and it went to orphans court, and somehow, I've read this thing so many times, I can't quite understand it, somehow Simon Heller got the property with some deal involved, and that became his property. The same with anybody interested in the Heller homestead. It's in this property right here. The Hellers Michael Heller did not have that property in the beginning. It was somebody else. I don't have it here. But again, they died. A little bit more information on those early properties. You got to realize that there was nothing there when these people came here. Within the first year, they had to build a house. They had to get food to supply them over the winter, for some period of time over the winter, and then they went on to live, and quite a few of them didn't make it. Now, Nathaniel Irish got this property, and one of his requirements was that within 1 year of 1737, he had to build a grist mill, which he did. He got it built within 1 year, and this is supposed to be what that grist mill looked like at that time. With all of these properties and whoever got the property from the Penns, they had a little stipulation in there that for every acre of land that they received, they had to pay 1/2 pence per year per acre. And you got to realize they had to make a living and get something to sell and get money to pay these Penns to keep that property. And this is where a lot of them lost their properties and they were switching over from one to the other. Or somebody else took their property. In many cases where the land, on the land grants, it shows that somebody else was looking to live next door, but they never made it. Even after the property owner passed away. Now, Nathaniel Irish kept the area up for a few years, and then he ended up selling it to George Cruikshank. Nathaniel Irish came from the West Indies, and must have been his buddy at the time. George Cruikshank came from the West Indies, so he sold the property to him. Well, as it turned out, Nathaniel Irish moved out of the area. He went into New Jersey, and a few years he was ill at the time, and in a few years he passed away. George Cruikshank was had a sugar plantation in the West Indies, and his parents had money over there. So when they came over, they were living there pretty good. He got married and had a son and daughter. daughter married a John Curry, who was from Philadelphia. He was a lawyer, worked from Reading, and he operated the mill for some time. And they lived, I want you to remember this part of it, they lived in a stone house that was on top of the hill. And as it says that later on, this Neck house, he lived in the same house that the Neck lived in. I say that because that house was the house I was born in, and I'll show it to you later on. In 1787, Curry deeded the house to his brother-in-law, Dr. James Cruikshank, and he operated the mill for a little while, but he got married, and he ended up bequeathing the land to his children, Mary, Francis, and William Curry. Now, John Curry, built a ferry, or operated a ferry, across the Lehigh. From Lehigh, or from Apple Butter Road, across the Lehigh to Freemasburg. And it is said it was called Curry's Ferry, and in 1779, Sullivan's army used that ferry to cross the Lehigh on his march north. Well, it ended up, all was well and good, until 1860, when a Mr. Jarrett came along and built a wooden bridge across the Lehigh. Well, that survived for a few years, but then in 1862, one of the big floods come through. It wiped out the wooden bridges, Allentown, Bethlehem, and Freemasburg. They were all gone. So for a while there, they were without any transportation across the bridge, or across the Lehigh. Now both Allentown and they had ferries going, so we just had to go back and rely on the ferries. Now this is the Shimersville area. A couple things I want to point out here. This green line, which is essentially running down the center of the road, came from 412, which is out here, toward Allentown, came down along here, and this green line was a trolley car track. The trolley ran from Bethlehem through here, come down across the trolley bridge, went out and across the Freemasburg Bridge. Someplace, right here. There's a picture of the old Freemasburg Bridge, and if you look close, there's a trolley car sitting on this bridge. Whenever I talk about this place, I go back and right, coming down off the walkway was the old railroad station. Now, in 1852, the railroad was built, a spur was built, coming from Iron Hill, coming across, down through here, went across and went into that Freemasburg station. It also come back, a spur come off, and this was a coal yard, which I'll have more information on that later. Okay, I gotta stay with my sequence here. This home, this building here, and to show you, and I think there's a drawing here listing, yeah, over here, who lived in all the different homes here. But anyway, this home down here, up in the back, was one of the city of Bethlehem's lost cemeteries. That was the burial place of the George Trushank and his daughter and brother-in-law, or Curry's brother-in-law. They were buried up in there. Now, it went along until about 1850 was the last time anybody saw anything of those graveyards. They're lost. They were lost. But when the steel company was building the coke plant, they came through here and put a water line from the Lehigh coming up, and they unearthed a skeleton. So they must have hit that graveyard. Never said anything about it. Matter of fact, the individual who did it had the skeleton with a skull in his office for a while. Now, the question came up earlier by somebody. This little building over here, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that a little later, is the old foundry, the Shimers Foundry, which was off of Apple Butter Road. A little tidbit about that was 2-3 years ago, when they're putting in the power plant out further out of Apple Butter Road, they were coming down through here and they put underground 2 pipes, 124 and 118-inch diameter coming down. And they were not allowed to cross Soften Creek with the power equipment. So in order to get those pipes through there, they had to go down and tunnel in under the creek, come out the other side and run their 2 lines down. And I was out there trying to take pictures, and I was hoping to get something that they would dig up, and I did get a picture of an old trough that they used for tanning. They dug that up and buried it again. But anyway, well, as this shows, the picture here shows, this cutoff here was no longer there. And this is the old grist mill. And we'll see better pictures of all of this stuff a little bit later on.
Closed it, moved out.
Now, I talked about the railroad, the old railroad that went through there. To me, this is an amazing little feat. See this bridge this pile of stone here? It was one of the bridge abutments for the bridge that supported that railroad coming across. There is another one, actually, there are 2 more actually over in the woods here. This is the railing of the present concrete Shimersville Bridge. That bridge abutment, stone, set in the middle of the creek. It has survived, I don't know how many severe floods. And the amazing thing is, it's still standing where it was, 7 years ago when I was down there to take the pictures. Well, it's built something out today. I don't know if it would last that long. Now, the other little thing that was down there was this little bitty. And as soon as I mentioned it, this was the railroad station for the North Penn Railroad in Friedensburg on Apple, well, I guess it was Shimersville Road that came up over the top here and came up to the bridge and went across the thing. as soon as you mentioned the railroad station, there was a spring down there. Everybody walked past, drank from that spring. Well, when I was down there taking pictures of that, back in the weeds, in the sticker bushes, I heard this water running out of the pipe, coming off of that mountain. Same mountain that has the garbage dump on it. Everybody who, well, I shouldn't say everybody who drank of it survived, because in many cases, time has taken their toll. One of the things I forgot to mention, when I had that overall plan up, is the schoolhouse. Mount Pleasant Schoolhouse, one-room schoolhouse, was on the other side of the area of the homes that you saw. It was on the other side of the railroad. There's a picture of it here someplace. Someplace. It's here, believe me, it's here. Is one of the schoolhouses that usually ends up missing. I don't know if you know anybody, you want to take a shot at it? The class of 1901. Now, going back to the layout of Shimersville, was who lived there. One of the things I forgot to point out on the other one, but all right, I said that there was a coal yard up here. It was Gross's, then it was A.A. Heater, was a coal yard. They eventually moved to Freemansburg. But you see this, the way the angle of this bridge? Well, when they put the new road in, and I'll show you later on, this line of the road straightened out. So the road coming through here eliminated all of these homes. Try to stay in my sequence here. If you know any of the names, the home down here at the very end was the Rotzenbecks. If you know, this part is hard for me. Since I was that high, I've known him as Lenny C. He now goes by the name of Lenny Sy. So, this house, Rotzenbeck, Mary Rotzenbeck, was Lenny's aunt. She was one of the last ones that we know lived there. Number three, the building number 3 was a blacksmith shop. 4 unknown. Number 5 was Sewell, who ended up being an aunt of mine. Pinner and Nagy. Now, Nagy is questionable because down at the gristmill, you might have met him down there. An old gentleman, Nagy, used to come down there every Saturday to talk. And he passed away not too long ago. He used to live there, and he said he remembers when he was 16 years old seeing a fire. And I'll talk about that later. A fire across here, one of the buildings burning at the foundry. Schultz, I don't know anything about, but Angerman. In this room on Tuesdays is a art class. And the one who directs the class, that was a grandparent. Can't remember her name.
Fair?
What?
Fair. That'd be fair?
No. But anyway, that was planned.
That's what they, yeah, I know.
Farkas, number 12, up on top of the hill, was Damian, which was my grandmother, and it was one of her sons that married the Sewell. And Schrader, and then it was our place over in here. We had to move out of there in 1941 because at that time they were blasting the road. All these homes were gone. And they were blasting to cut the road through. And over here is a shot of as they were coming through, digging for that tunnel, or not tunnel, the roadway coming through. And they had a bank on this side, which puzzles me, because now it's the road, and over the bank is the creek. So they might have taken that down and moved the creek. But our house, if you look, it sets back in here. It was still there. And they're blasting. I have a picture of my uncle and my father and myself. We were down cutting wood in this building here. It was a little garage. It was a concrete garage. So when they blow the siren, you'd have to head for the hills and get protection because they'd blast and rocks would fall all over the place. We always had to keep the shutters closed on that side of the house because you never know when you got hit. One of the other little tidbits, down in here, as I said, this road comes down through here and come around. A few years back, the Environmental Protection Agency came after the steel company that they wanted to put a boat access ramp into the Lehigh. The steel company said, sure, we'll grade it, put stone down, so you can back your boat right down into the Lehigh, and that was so that they could get their boats out on Lehigh to put the booms out to catch the oil that was coming down. Great, everything was happy until the Indian Affairs got a hold of it. And since back in time, the Indians had a little village down here, and even when the first settlers were in this area, those Indians would come back every year to have a powwow at their forefathers' home. Well, the Indian Affairs said to the steel company, we want you to put up $100,000 so that we could do an archaeological dig in this area. The steel company says, whoa, we're gonna grade it, put the stone in, do everything for you, and you want us to put more money into it? They call up the EPA and says, hey, you want the landing, you paid $100,000. It wasn't too long where we got the word back, put the landing in. No date. Okay. I'm going to go back to this overlay, the foundry. And I do have a much better picture of it. Look here. Or maybe I got it. Right here. This is what all the buildings look like. at that time. This comes off with sandboard mats, fire mats at the time. Jacob, the son of John, built a plant in 1824 for filling, dyeing, and finishing cloth. Everything went good for a while. And in 1929, it was enlarged, and it was leased to a William Chamberlain. And then in 1837, George Shimer, the son of John, took over the mill. In 1842, it was washed away by a flood. The buildings were. So it was rebuilt, and a new stone building was made. And in 1846, improved machinery was added. And in 1848, another building was added. And again, they were doing pretty good. 1862 come along, a flood washed out the dam. 1863, the building was burnt down. And after that, they decided, that's it. In 1864, they rebuilt it, and it burned down again. Business at the time was doing real good. They sold, at that time, $60,000 worth of woolen goods in 1 year. George eventually sold out to his the woolen mill part and to his brother James, and moved the woolen part to Allentown to get away from all this flooding. This is a picture of the flood in December of 1901. Although you haven't seen the main street of Shimersville, this is the entrance to the covered bridge, and this is the trolley bridge sitting down here. So you can see how high the flood waters came. You won't realize that until I show you the whole area that was down there. That was one of their problems in the area. That lower section was always flooded. One of my older sister's biggest laughs was that little building that was down on the end was in one of the floods. They were standing there watching, and they went by boat to that little house that the Rotzenbecks had, and they hauled out a guy in his red long johns out the second-story window. That's how they got him out of there. He just would not leave. So the mill set without anything happening to it, and in 1915, the foundry was known as the William Shimer and Son Company burned, and it was never rebuilt. At the time, they were making sad irons, metal hinges, and little toys, cast iron toys, scales, and small hardware. Which, if you had one of those toys nowadays, it would be worth a lot of money. And there's a half-hearted picture of it, the toys over here. All right, let's go back again in time to the Shimers. And if anybody wants to have some fun in doing a genealogy study, the Shimers is a good one. The original first Shimer, Jacob Shimer, came to the area sometime in when? Well, anyway, he came from Skippack. He moved into the area out at the Lutz, where the Lutz schoolhouse is located. And by the way, the Shimers still own property out there. He came to the area with his second wife. He had 7 kids with his first wife. He had 2 more with his second wife before he moved into the area. And once he settled down, he had 5 more children. So of that group, that's just the start of it. Of that group, there were 14 Shimers running around, plus the parents. One of his sons was Edward Shimer, and I don't have the number of children or what children he had, but he had several children. And the first ones, the first Shimer family, Jacob Shimer, the grandson. Oh, I forgot to mention was that first Shimer, his second wife's name was Elizabeth. So when it came at that was the first generation. The third generation, Jacob, first name, married an Elizabeth. They had children by the name of Conrad, Samuel, Edward, Peter, Isaac, and John. And there's a couple names that are missing in there. This Jacob Shimer built, in 1812, he built a new gristmill close to the one that was already there. But when you look at the pictures, it almost looks as though it was the same mill as what it was, as the old one. But the nice thing, whoever, I don't know if it was set up this way or if they actually did it this way, but this second Elizabeth, her last name was Bile. And Bile had property which now we would say was in the area of Iron Hill. So it was close for them to get married. All of their children's middle initial was B. So it was easy to follow them through the sequence. So they were involved in several different transactions. He lived to be 78 years old, and his wife was 84 years old when she passed away. They are both buried, and several of the Shimer family were buried out in the Lower Saucon Church, in their graveyard out there. Now, as I said, the Shimer genealogy is a good one to follow, because it's John Shimer married Mary Shimer, and Jacob Shimer built them this house sitting on top of the hill, where they raised 10 children, and there were several grandchildren born in that house. Now, yeah, you can see people. They're here. This was on top of the hill, which I'll show you later which house it is. Look at it. there was another house up there. Actually, there were two more. There was another big house, the Longenslayer's house, I believe it is, which was the granddaughter of Jacob Shimer. This one was James Shimer. And I don't know how it fits in, but his middle name, or his middle initial was O. So I'm not sure if it was part of the same direct family or one of the other families come in there. But this was another big house that was sitting up on top of the hill there. All right, let's get into Shimersville. At the bottom, the old covered bridge. This was the gristmill. This is that big house, the neck house. I think this was the blacksmith shop. And I'm not sure what those are, but we have some other pictures. The railroad came down in the back of all of this. And you can't see it on this one, you'll see it on some of the others, some of the stacks from the steel company. Way back then, they did advertising. The big sign says, these department stores O'Reilly's in South Africa. There's another sign there, supply company, couldn't make out the first name. And there was another one, equipment department stores of O'Reilly's in South Bethlehem. So they did advertising on the ends of the bridge way back then. That bridge was gone somewhere by 1912, I think it was. It was no longer there, but they replaced it with a steel bridge. Now, looking south, you see the trolley tracks. This was the James house. This is the Longenslayers. This is the John Smith's, John and Mary's place. And this was the old stone house, which is the house I was born in. I wasn't that old, and I don't think I was really allowed in this backyard here because of the road being there, other than maybe during the winter I was on the sled with one of my sisters or brother, because we would sleigh ride back in there. My father came from Hungary, and he liked farming, so we always had some pigs. And every fall, we had a pig killing, and he always would smoke, had a smokehouse out back, and he would always smoke some of the meat, and it was hung upstairs in the attic. As he said, it took him the longest time to figure out, you didn't build that fire in under the smokehouse, you built it next to it, because he burned down quite a few smokehouses. Now, this is that same fence which was in the other picture. This is the backyard of our place. This is the gristmill. All I remember of it was one stone wall. And we'll see some other pictures. And this was the big house and these places there. This is the trolley car track, and this is the trolley car picking up passengers down there. Funny part of it was on this side of the house, we had a cistern. And after they started driving cars, and it got icy out there, my mother says, we always had a car in the cistern. And the trolley car come down with its lights, and the track was aimed right at our house. So we always had a big light coming in at night. This is a same bridge area. This is going to Friedensburg. This is Applebutter Road. These are the streams coming around there. At one time early on, you had the grist mill here, there was a sawmill, and there was talk of an oil mill in this area down here. But later on, it was abandoned. And these are the homes coming off of the bridge. I talked right in the beginning of the Pax Air. Before the Pax Air was there, and as you can see, this is the old railroad that went through there. Across that area was the zinc works. It was called Florence Junction. It was part of the zinc company process. And you can see the stacks for number 2 open heart in the back there, and some of the oil tanks and stuff for the steel company. You had a zinc works here and one in Bethlehem, where the right in the area of the Hilly Hill Bridge. Now, the zinc was mined in the Friedensville mines, and they had daily trips by wagon, pulled by oxen or horse, coming around the mountain, going to the zinc works. They would carry coal back, zinc ore would come in. And it would take them a better part of a day to make that trip. So he wanted a good job at the time. He drove mules or whatever through the area. Now, as I said, that Pax Air is in that area right now. This was the last pictures of the grist mill after it was modernized, and the next bought it over, which I'll go into their story shortly. And these are the homes. This is, you can see where the trolley car went onto the bridge, and where the horse and buggies went across there. But as you're going to see, there's a little car up here. Now, my aunt lived in one of these homes. I'm not sure which one from here. But they were all nice homes built by the man who lived in that big home up there. And this was his place, John King. My mother said he was a millionaire. And if you look at his lifestyle of the inside of his home, these pictures here show the inside of his home. Whoever took the photography there, he took a picture of this side, he turned around and took a picture of that side, so he had both sides of one room. So that was his home. Now, this was John King. He was born in Williams Township. And when he was 12 years old, he became an orphan. He stayed in that area and apprenticed as a carpenter. At the age of 22, he picked up and moved to North Carolina. And there he was involved with a contractor building railroads. And for some reason, in 1839, at 25 years old, he came back to the area. And he got married to the daughter of one of the gentlemen who, I'm getting ahead of myself here, bought the mill. So he ended up with the Connect Mill. John Connect operated the mill for 35 years, and he added quite a bit of property to his holdings. And at that time, the property had already expanded by several hundred acres previously by this George Khrushchev, who bought up a lot of land. So John, he and his wife had their 50th wedding anniversary, and they had all the big wigs from the area out there at their house, a big party. And as it turned out, 20 days after that, he passed away at 82 years old. His wife passed away 6 months later. So Howard Connect, his youngest child, he had a twin aunt who never got married. But Howard Connect, the youngest child, inherited all his land holdings, which was quite large at the time. But John Connect, as he was building his empire, he was one of the owners of the Abels Opera House in Easton. He was the proprietor of the Connect building in Easton. He was the director of the Easton National Bank, director of the Bethlehem Iron Company, of which he was a founder, director of the Lehigh Valley Railroad Company, director of the Pennsylvania Railroad Company, which was the road going from here down to Philadelphia. And he organized the Northampton Iron Company and was elected president. And a large furnace was built, and I forgot to show you where that was, but it was right north of the entrance of Saucon Creek into the Lehigh. He built a furnace there, but the Bethlehem Steel ended up buying them out, and it never really said what happened to it, but they got rid of the furnace. In 1885, when Howard took over the mill, he did away with the sawmill, and he modernized the place. And when he had it running and under his supervision, they were turning out 45 barrels of flour every day. They had 4 brands of flour that he had patented. The first and best was gold flour. The next best was mighty dollar flour, white lily flour, and then Baker's fancy flour. Now, if you ever got into the grist mill in Hellertown, a few years back, it was still there. There was a bag on the second floor of the white lily flour. There was just the bag. Those bags naturally, in a lot of cases, were made into dresses and uniforms, skirts for women. Now, this place was running pretty good for a while. I'm not going to show you the overhead slides of the different rooms because they're all up here. We had a gentleman by the name of Charles Schwab, of the Bethlehem Steel Company, who wanted the land in Shimersville. He was after Howard for quite some time to buy it. And actually, in February 2nd, 1915, he bought most of the land, the farmland out there, with the exception of 4 homes. He paid Howard, 1915, $500,000 for all of that land. In 1925, the city of Bethlehem purchased some of the land area for the sewage plant. However, due to the war, it was never really started. It didn't get going until much later on. I want to show you a picture of a good looking kid. That was my oldest sister. That was the stone house that we lived in. We rented. That was the home of all of these old timers when they first came into the area. I was 4 years old at that. There's my hot rod. It was great when we lived in that house, and 2 of my aunts and uncles lived in the house also. It was that big. When they moved out, the whole first floor, 2 big rooms were empty, and the hallway was empty. That was fun. One of the few things I remember about the place. But 1941, we moved out of there, and they finished cutting the road through. And in the process of moving, my mother wouldn't let my daughter, or her daughters, take some of these things. But they did take the fireplace mantle, which was removed from Shimersville to Crest Avenue, which is, you know where the old airport is, and 78 comes down on the 412, that's the next road into Bethlehem. This mantle was hanging down in the basement there, and it wasn't until I took it down when I had to move my sister's things out of there, I realized it was sitting there for all those years upside down. So I took it and put it in my garage, upside down. It still serves as a good shelf for a lot of junk. In this house, you can see this part of it was brick, and that addition over there was wood. So somebody went through quite an extensive repair of the house. And before my 2 sisters passed away, I asked them if they would remember the layout of the house. So the one did a pretty good job of trying to sketch it all up. And when the other one saw it, nah, it wasn't like that, it was this way. Sisters, they never agree with anything. But the way the house was set up, this side, if you've been to any of these old homes, was the living quarters of the rich. That side was the servant's place. And since it was a farm, the one whole backside of the house was a big storage facility for canned goods. And another thing that when my parents moved out of the house, they took these big shelves along. Well, to get it out of the house to move it to my place, because I couldn't leave them there, I had to take them apart. Any of you old carpenters will know what I mean when the nails that held those things together were the square nails. I was quite surprised to see that. But I have them in my basement, along with other junk that I just couldn't get rid of. One of the other things that I picked up, and although I've been asked many times if I would part with these, and the same answer is, They were the mill sails legend books of the gristmill from 1866, 1867, 1871, and 1872. I have copies of a few of the pages sitting here. To go through them would be a history in itself. And I will add, you can go through any of these things which I show here, and they have a history, all that you could develop a talk on probably any one of those things. Oh, before I forget, I brought along a special 2 papers that for the teachers in the audience or in the group should read. Okay? There was a contract for maybe Metzler to teach in the Steel City School. She lived in Freemansburg. So she had to walk from Freemansburg out to the Steel City. And if you drive that, it's quite a hike. It tells what she was paid, what she had to do, and so forth. And I have an article here that she typed after she had her stroke from 1925 to 1927. But it tells her experience of teaching. Teachers nowadays say they have it hard. So if anybody wants to read that, it's there. Now, this is a real old sketch, and I tried to color it up to make it look like something, which I don't know if I did any good to it or not. The blue is Salton Creek and these ponds. This is going in under the bridge. This is the bridge, and this is the railroad that I talked about, and goes under the main railroad into Lehigh. I'll show you this. This was that railroad that came through there in 1852. They put that in while they made the cut on Iron Hill. If you go through Iron Hill in that area, the railroad coming from Philadelphia makes the curve going into Bethlehem. There is a big cut out there. Well, they didn't have the equipment that they have now, so it took them quite a while to make that cut. So, Connect, who lived down here, had the railroad put in behind all the homes. This was, the green was the old road that came through there. And then, this is the new road. I have that mixed up. This is the old road. This is the new road, the green. And then they come back later and straighten this out when they put the new bridge in. But this is the old road, and our house sit over here. When I gave a talk out in Easton this some time ago, I made the statement that I was born over the #1 settling tank of the sewage treatment plant. You know what that means? Right? There was an older woman, librarian down there. If you ever been down in the Northampton County Historical Society, she's an old woman, hard of hearing, and she couldn't believe that that village was there. Now, I talked to several people earlier. This was Cokeworks Road. Come over here and went down and come out at the Lower Salton Church. This road came from Apple Butter Road and connected in there, but over in here is, or was, the Helms Creamery. And that lasted for so long, and it burned down. I have pictures of it. I have pictures of it someplace here that it burned down. That was in that area. And over there it is. This is a photo or a drawing showing the homes that were in that area, which show these homes. This drawing here is looking in this way at these places. This is the creamery that burned, which is in here. And there was also a hardware business, blacksmith shop that was in competition with the Shimer and Sons foundry. They too were making cast irons, castings in that area. This whole area is under the cinder bank of the steel company. Matter of fact, I happened to be there. This is Top Bank. I happened to be there with the survey crew when the Top Bank was right over here. This was all Lawbox Creek coming through here, and I have it colored up over there in that corner picture. That is, Lawbox Creek was changed around, and that's all covered in under the slide banks of the steel company. That's the only place you will see any reference to that. At one time, I saw an arch bridge, which could have been back there, but I've never been able to find it again. Now, I've talked about Iron Hill. You people, all of you, had to pass this place many times, not realizing what was there. I'm going to start up here. This is coming from Bethlehem, the Heights. The road came down, and it came across here. There was a little bridge down here, and then this went into Hellertown. The trolley car comes through here. This is Iron Hill, and the people who lived up in those homes. Edward Fulmer, who went to school with me, I'm not sure if it was this Fulmer or that Fulmer, which home he lived in. I always forgot to ask them about that. But these homes are all gone. They are now in the process of cutting through there. The road that I showed you before came down and curved around here and come across. They did away with this bridge, and they rearranged the route of the creek. Trolley car come down and went into Hellertown. Here it is. This is the drawing, and I show a continuation where the trolley car that went down and would come down into Hellertown. Over in this area, right at the entrance of Salton Park, was a gristmill. Benner and Hess gristmill, which was torn down, and there's a building standing there, which I'm not sure if that is the old miller's house or not. But they are going to change the road around in that area, which I have a map right there of the road changes of 412. If you're familiar with Salton Park, you go in that entrance. You go through the tunnel. You go across the bridge, across the creek. You go down to the other road, which is Fire Lane. If you were to turn right, you would come into what essentially is a dead end now. But there was a tunnel through there. That road came all the way through to this little place that I show up in here, Channel Inn, which was a little hotel, and from what I heard, it had a reputation. That was all there, and then this is all how the mill race was cut out for the mill. Actually, when you go into Salton Park, there are two arches. One was for the creek, and the other was for the mill race, and a little buggy trail coming through there. Remember that? Good. But this was Iron Hill. Another place which, matter of fact, all along here, one of the last things that was here was a stone wall. And truthfully, I didn't miss it until my friend said, well, do you remember the stone wall? Oh yeah, I remember that. It was leaning out about a foot over the sidewalk. I don't know if they took it down or it fell down. But that is the extent of my overlays. And what I'm going to do here, and my lamp held out. For anyone who wants to come back up and take a second look at some of these, you're free to do so. As I said, this is pictures from inside the Connect home. This is the Mount Pleasant School, and the story of Schwab lion thing. These are pictures of the zinc company and the road leading into Hellertown. And actually, across the street from that grist mill was a slaughterhouse. And this is the Helms Dairy. That I just showed you. The foundry, a little story on it. These are pictures. Matter of fact, these pictures, 8.5x11s, are posted over in Town Hall, and one in the lobby and one in the big, one set in the big meeting. This is the bridge I was telling you about that caused down there, the cover bridge, and it's covered. This is Northampton Heights, that we refer to as the Heights. And this is a story of it. It was a borough of Northampton Heights. It was an independent borough until the city decided to take it over. Somehow lost this quadrant of it. It was, what you have now going through is 4th Street. This was Washington Junior High School. You had 4th Street, 1st Street up here was Anthracite, Bessemer, Harmon, Diamond, and Emory. All went back. Back in here, don't get too far, back here I think it is, was the Broadhead Elementary School. Now, you can't realize this because I don't have the whole picture, but my older sister and a group of people from Shimersville, they always used to get together and walk from Shimersville to Broadhead School, which was quite a hike. And at the time, they said when it was snowy and bad weather, the steel company left them go through the mold foundry to stay out of the weather. This is a picture, color picture, looking in where the casino hotel is located now. You can see what was back there at the time. This is a picture of what the BOF looked like, and this is what it looked like coming down, and this is the picture that was in the paper. There's an interesting story behind that. That was actually, this was my very last day of the steel company. This picture here is electric generators. Most of you have been down at the steel stacks. You have a big pavilion sitting there. Off to the right of the pavilion is this big wheel. That is one of these wheels, so you can see what was in that building. There was the second half of that building going the other way, which had turbo blowers. Little tidbit of the steel. Down in under here, that was down there, with these turbo blowers, they generated a lot of wind. And they had big tunnels down there, with the wind blew through the tunnels, funneled down, and they went into the bustle pipes of the blast furnaces, which blew the hot air and hot gases that held up the burden in the blast furnace. All that stuff that was burning was held up by air pressure. And it was burning, and the metal was dropping down. This is the covered bridge going into the city of Bethlehem and the railroad tracks, and this is a little storyline. One of the things many people don't know, South Bethlehem was on the north side of the Lehigh River, where Music Fest was. That was South Bethlehem. One of the big things in Hellertown is that bridge they took down across the Saucon Creek, the Beckel Bridge. It was made in the foundry that was there on Sand Island. There was also a sawmill, lumber mill on Sand Island. These are some of the buildings and stuff thing. There was a big event here when the trolley car went through to Hellertown and paved the road. I don't know how many people recognize this picture. The Riley Oil Company. It was located right in under what is now 78. It was on the mountainside across from the airport. And this is the airport. One little thing I wanted to point out here. You had Limerick School here. Here in this picture, if you look close, there's a white line in through there. In my younger days, you didn't ride places or get a lift or something, you walked. So there was so much traffic going from Crest Avenue, which was this place here, going down to the store. That path was well worn, it was about that wide, and no weeds. It was all packed down. It was there, and there was also a path coming across from the school down in here. Matter of fact, where Wendy's is located. Did you know that that was a dump? It was. How about the pool and the racetrack? Saucon Park Rose Gardens. It was a beautiful place. There was a band shell back in there and all, and this is Saucon Park when it was a big pool. You have the Saucon Ironworks, pictures of the Saucon Ironworks, and the Saucon Railroad Station. One of the things I wanted to point out on here is if you walk the trail, you get back in there some distance, as you're going along, you will notice that there's a concrete walkway along the trail. You think about it now. That is this concrete curbing. That's where the railroad station is set. And actually across the street, where the foundation, or a little bit down for the foundations for the iron company. This is the old bridge, the concrete bridge that crossed 412, and the pictures in here are when it was torn down. The two covered bridges in Hellertown, High Street and Water Street, the school on Black River Road, the Redington Munitions Complex, a plan of the Saucon Ironworks, trolley service. I don't know how many people saw that. How many people of you knew that there was a trolley car that ran from Bethlehem over Wyandotte Hill, and it went down to Coopersburg.
Was that Philadelphia?
No, that, and Coopersburg is where it connected to the Liberty Bell Line,
Oh.
okay?
That was called the Toonerville Trolley. And today, it's in the museum up in Maine, Trolley Car Museum. And I knew the man that ran it on the last trip. He was a friend of mine.
Hopefully, he wasn't the same conductor who was running it when it come down Wyandotte Hill and they made the turn onto Summit Street. And they didn't quite make the
I'll
turn.
have to ask his
Flopped over.
Maybe someone is a friend of mine.
It flopped over. There's pictures of it, of this thing flopping over. On top of Wyandotte Hill was the car barn.
Right.
Later on, that was converted into a picnic grove. My parents' church had several picnics up there, which I had attended as a little guy. The Hess Benner Mill, the entrance to Sullivan Park. That's on the covered bridge. And I saw there was some interest here in the Colesville Hotel, which was torn down when I-78 went through. I understand in there, in the bar, there was a line. You were on this side, you were in Northampton County on that side, Lehigh County, and Upper Saucon and Lower Saucon. They divided the place up just for show. These pictures here, or actually these four are a sequence of what the Bethlehem Steel looked like in 1873. There we go. Just wonder how long it was. Almost made it through the day. This is a picture of the steel company. It's an old one. Ever familiar with the steel company? You had the number 2 open hearth and number 4 open hearth. There were only 2 stacks there. It ended up with 4 or 5 stacks, so it's an early picture. But anyway, these pictures are of old Bethlehem when it first started. You go down there now, and come on, right here. This double cross, you will see the remains of this part of the building, which was the old rail mill that made cast iron rails for the steel company way back when it started. This one I should have to explain. It's a shot of Bethlehem, South Bethlehem, looking southeast. Now that little piece there is a close-up of the Saucon Iron Works, the Thomas Iron Works. This is a picture of the Moyer Mill, the Meadows Grove is in there. This is the consistency, Saucon Valley consistency. She's not watching me. But this was the old sawmill that was there. At that time it was changed over. This is an old picture I just picked up showing some of the old buildings that were behind the homes on Shimersville Road. This is of the mill again. This is the railroad station in Freemansburg. At the time, it was a big thing to have 2 railroad stations in a small town of Freemansburg, one on each side of the river. This was the central, the other was the Lehigh Valley. And this is the area which I was talking about just recently, that's covered down with the Bethlehem steel slab. Any questions of the area?
What year did Shimersville get the name Shimersville?
1816.
1816?
1816, when the Shimers first built the first, well not first, but rebuilt the old mill.
able to sell Shimersville? Did everybody that lived there rent and then somebody owned it? Like when the Steel wanted to buy it?
All right, Howard Keck, and if you're really, really interested, I will enroll the big drawing back here, which will show you all the properties in Lower Saucon area, out in that area. Howard Keck owned most of them. So that's how,
And the people who lived on them, he just rented to them. Did you rent where you lived?
yes,
Everybody there rented?
well, it belonged to the city of Bethlehem. The property there belonged to the city of Bethlehem.
But did most of it belong to the other guy who got $500,000
Yes.
for it? And then City of Bethlehem owned the rest of it? And it told you you had to leave when they were gonna put the road in?
The only reason we stayed there so long was we moved from there to Crest Avenue. The place we were supposed to move into, the people were still living there, waiting for the place they wanted to move into up the street. So it was, everybody had to take their turn moving.
What did your father do for a living?
He worked in the car repair shop in the end. He started out as a rigger, he went out to Ohio in the mines, and then he come back as a rigger, and then he worked in the car repair shop.
Did your mom work?
In the beginning, she worked, I think it was in the beginning, she worked at a cigar factory that was on New Street in Bethlehem.
A new,
Her and her friend her friend lived in Steel City. She walked out at the Freemansburg Bridge, got the trolley car, they come over, they got the trolley car in Shimersville and went into 3rd Street to work. And then later in life, she worked in the silk mill on William Street in Bethlehem.
what were their names?
Which ones?
Your parents?
John and Helen.
Did you have you had 2 sisters, did you have any other siblings?
Margaret.
Did you have 13 siblings?
No. No. My oldest one was Margaret, then my brother John, and Helen, and then myself.
Is Shimerville gone? Like you
Essentially, it's
can't- you
gone.
just can't, it's under the Steel property now.
No, actually, they removed it because the tanks for Shimersville are down about 35 feet or so from where the homes were. That whole area was lowered.
Were they dug out?
They dug all that land down.
Why?
If you look,
Maybe to get it nice and low for the sewage plant, so the water would flow downhill into the sewage plant.
Oh,
if you look over here, you can see our house is sitting up on the hill. And this whole area, and this is why I say, this doesn't look right to me because there's a bank over there, and there's no bank there now. So what I think happened was as the steel company was dumping slag, and that was a big event there, they would dump slag over, you could see this glow. That came out and they kept moving the creek over, and eventually they took this whole bank away
good.
and used it as fill.
The proving grounds, is that part of the Shimersville, or Bethlehem Steel used to test out their good guns?
No,
That's Redington,
it's
isn't it?
part of Redington,
Already?
yes.
Okay.
And actually, how did I miss it? The proving grounds in Redington, they made their shells and big guns out there.
Right.
After the war, they tore the place down. The buildings, I believe, were mostly wood. Foundations are still there. When the Second World War came on, the steel company needed buildings to produce bullets, shells. So they put in East Lehigh. East Lehigh. And that's why I put it there, is also a thing of the past. Another little side story there is when the Vietnam War broke out, I was working on a project there of making the 16-inch shells
Oh.
for the battleships. And as soon as we got it up for the government, as soon as we got up running to got the right number of shells out per day,
Right.
they canceled the order.
Oh. They went over too. A lot of women worked there. My sister, a lot of my lady friends worked there.
And that was one of our problems with the shell program. There was an old guy working in number 3 treatment who was working there at the time. And they were inspecting these shells, 16-inch shell. It's about yay round, stood about that high, tapered thing. I can't imagine how the heck they shot that through the air,
Oh, yeah.
but they did. The women handled these things on the inspection table. They rolled them down. So we had to come up with a system that the guys at that time could handle the shells. Because now you were dealing with the union and they couldn't pick up more than 50 pounds. So you got the women, you had to design this thing, hey, the women did it, you should be able to do it. So they had to roll them down, they would grind off a spot and do a Grinnell test. They shot it with a ball to see how far down the ball would go, and that measured the density of the steel. And then it went in. I think it went into at one point or the other, it went in for treatment either before or after they did the Grinnell test.
Well, didn't the Navy own some of that? They still have ore, or they still have ore?
No, that's-
fenced off and
that's
everything.
all cleaned out.
Is that cleaned up? Because you weren't allowed in there.
Right. There was also a section of the one building, I think it's number 10 treatment, the south end of that building. During I think the Vietnam War, they come up, the Navy put in 50 to 100 brand new lathes. They never used them. They were covered with cosmoline and covered down with tarps. And every year, the Navy inspectors would come around or let the steel company know, we are going to inspect this, and this lathe. It was never the same one. So the steel company had to come in, uncover it, take all the cosmoline off, and check it out, make sure it ran. And they came in and tested it. Okay, it works, cosmoline, covered all back up for another 10 years or so. And then, sometime around after the 16-inch shell program was going on, I know we cleaned out some of those lathes. And then after that, brand new equipment, scrap.
Do I have a minute to tell you one more story?
Sure.
Okay, on top of the cinder bank, during World War II, there was a building on stilts, and there was a guard in there, an army soldier with a machine gun on the right. And this went on until the war was over. Well, I worked for the horticulture department, and during the winter, we used to clean up around the steel. In the early 60s, we went up to clean around that building, and the machine gun and all the ammunition was still there. Believe it or not, we called plant patrols, and they called up the Senate, and they couldn't believe it. There's a machine gun and loads of bullets. They never picked it up.
I have a question to see if you know about this. From where they used to do the proving grounds on those cliffs, the bull run runs, there's woods on the side of the field and cliffs and things. There are these concrete bunkers that are on our property actually. And they don't have a floor, but they're along the stream. There's 2 of them. Now, we were told by some other people years ago that they used to store some ammunition or some gunpowder in there. Do you know anything about that? Because those buildings are actually still there.
She needs to read Ned Heindale's book about Redington. What's it called? Armor.
I don't remember anything.
Armor.
Gunpowder.
They had guard shacks.
Yeah.
And so they probably, I mean, they made bullets and they had to have gunpowder. I don't.
Now, used to fire into the mountain.
Gingers, I'll talk to you, you can get that.
I
book
actually
out.
have that book.
Huh?
Yeah, he contacted me,
I'll
emailed us a
I didn't
copy.
recognize
It's
you.
okay.
You can buy the book at, the, Northampton County Historical and Genealogical Society, they should have copies of
But he
it.
does mention those in there, huh?
That picture, that one picture, that is this, wasn't that from Redington, the
Yes.
Redington book?
I have the book.
This is a story about what was there in Redington. You can see some of the remains of the furnaces down there too.
Right.
I would have liked to go down, back in there.
If you go on the Suffolk Valley Conservancy's website, go on Photo Gallery,
Okay,
there's pictures of Redington, photos that I took, black and white photos from, I think, the late eighties. And you can see the foundations, you can see the arches, you can see the remnants of it probably was an incinerator, you know, because it had fire, it had, that special tile, like for heat, for fireplaces.
Right.
And you can see photos in there. But the book is great because it tells you all about Redington, and you live right there, so I love it.
I'm gonna come back to you in a little bit, go ahead.
When you were talking about they wanted to do something, but the Indians said that the Bethlehem Steel couldn't do that, are there anything with Indians in that area over there? Did you ever, there's supposed to be an Indian encounter up that way? Did you ever
An
hear of
Indian
that?
what?
An Indian
Yes.
encounter. The kids, all the kids in Steel City talk about this Indian encounter that's up on the hill. And they have gone, even the kids from Freemansburg used to even go over there.
I haven't heard that. That isn't true.
No, I was just wondering, because you had mentioned about Indians, I was just wondering if that.
I said I was gonna come back to her. In your area out there, going back in time, there was a large cave
I think it's still there.
that was used for weddings, dances, and
I think it's theirs, that's the
So forth.
Simpson Cave?
It's
Right off the
side of
corner,
hill.
I mean, we
I don't
have,
know where it
we
was.
still have a cave there,
It's, that's the one.
underneath those cliffs, right, where the proving grounds
Well,
are.
it's
Still
tall
a
enough
cave.
to have events, cause it's, when you get down into it, the ceiling's gotta be 30 feet high.
But I'm surprised they
So it's
used
like
it that
taking
much,
up
cause
stuff.
I thought it was kinda like that, you know, little sneaky place where we used to find bottles and things in there. But they used to actually have weddings and things inside there.
Yes.
Oh,
I read that someplace. Don't ask me where, because I don't know where.
we can take you to the cave.
I find things on the internet. I was having trouble finding things on the internet. I'll come back to that. I couldn't get back to them. So now when I find something, I highlight it and save it in a Microsoft Word or something. I got a whole pile of these things. I have no idea what they mean now. But another little story on that. These guys, I guess you gathered that I worked at the steel. But one time I was talking to some guys there. They were from Hellertown. And they were out at one of these parties in Steel City. And it was Saturday or Sunday, and they were walking home. It's getting late at night. And they had a little bit too much to drink. And they decided they're not gonna make it. So they looked around and they saw this little building, back of these homes. He says, we crawled in there and we slept for the night. Got up the next morning and they found out they slept in a pig pen.